right. Oh my gosh, what an intro. And we're here. And what a crazy day. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but if you're watching this live or if you're hearing about this even later in the week, outages with Facebook and Instagram everywhere. How many of you were like, oh my gosh, what is happening to my life? What is wrong? My life has been hijacked. Maybe not my life, but welcome to Association Chat, an online discussion where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, KiKi L'Italien, and today we are delving into a topic that could change the way you cultivate self-awareness at work and in your day-to-day life. It could change your life. This is important stuff. Joining us is Zovig Garboushian, the fiery force behind Boldness Ablaze, a boutique professional services firm dedicated to helping leaders rediscover themselves as the primary source of truth. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Zovig, I'm so glad you're here.
Yes, I am too. Thank you so much for having me, Kiki.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it was so exciting. We were having a discussion, getting caught up on some other stuff, and we started down this path of talking about this topic. And I thought this is incredibly important for everyone I know. I actually can't think of anyone that I know who couldn't benefit from talking about this. But following that and following scheduling, having you on the show, I read this statistic that said leaders today are not nearly as self-aware as they think they are, with 95% calling themselves self-aware in a world where just 10 to 15% of them actually are. And I know that on your own website, I was looking and you talk about how the most effective leaders are the most self-aware. So what does self-awareness look like? How do we know if we have it?
Yeah.
All of this stuff.
Yeah. So I think the term self-awareness gets thrown around a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, we are smart people. We are really smart people. And yes, we know about ourselves. We understand our personalities to a degree. And so I think that many of us can sort of misunderstand what self-awareness is and the depths to which that can go and the vital importance that it holds in our lives. So the way that I define self-awareness is really simple. It's the evolving relationship that we have with ourselves. It is
Mm.
not static. It's not oh, I took this personality assessment, or, oh, I've worked with a therapist a few times, or, and by the way, those are amazing tools. I use those tools. I am not knocking those tools, but self-awareness is more than just that. There's no sort of getting there. Like, yes, I'm
Mm-hmm.
self-aware. It's an evolving relationship that we have with ourselves, because the relationship we have with ourselves is our longest term relationship, and one we can't really get out of.
Right. We're hoping we don't get out of it. I
Right,
kind of want
right.
that long-term relationship for sure.
Exactly. And so I think that we can sometimes sacrifice knowing ourselves because we can get very caught up in our lives and the doing of our lives. And we can go our whole lives, we can live in our body our whole lives and be the last people we get to know. So when I talk about self-awareness, I talk about it as being the ongoing relationship that you have with yourself. And I don't think the way that I've sort of crafted this is that it's got three pieces to it. And the first one is curiosity for yourself.
Mm.
Having curiosity about why you are the way you are, why you react the way you react, why you have the emotions you have, why you've made the choices you have, like just an ongoing curiosity about who you are and why you are. And when you have curiosity, then you can have compassion for yourself. And this one can be really tough, particularly for high performers, people who self-identify as high achievers, high performers, the consummate doers, the perfectionists. Having compassion for ourselves can be a tall order. But the more curious I am about who I am, the more compassionate I can be. Now, that does not mean I let myself off the hook. It doesn't mean that I am not accountable. I'm extremely accountable within compassion. But compassion means I give myself grace. I give
Mm-hmm.
myself the benefit of the doubt. And I allow myself space to make mistakes so that I can learn, so that I can pursue excellence, not perfectionism, excellence.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
I think that's such a hang up for so many people, myself included, because I find myself thinking, well, if I'm harder on myself, that I'm somehow going to drive
Oh yeah.
myself into more success, right?
Hmm.
And but there's only so far that that can get you before you begin to break down.
Yeah.
And this idea of being curious, I think is really interesting, because in the back of my mind, like on the front end, I'm thinking, absolutely, curiosity is great. And then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, who has time for
I
curiosity,
know.
right? Like,
I know, but it's we all have time for it.
yeah, and Liz here says, "Hi Liz." Liz says, "Big hang up here too."
Yeah.
Oh man, I
Yeah.
know. It
Yeah.
gets big.
Yeah. So if you have curiosity and you have compassion, then the third piece of the self-awareness is the self-acceptance.
Mhm.
Both accepting ourselves for who we are, but also who we are not. Because I'm not everything to everyone, and I don't have any interest in being everything to everyone. I used to, and I used to try, and that's when things like imposter syndrome and anxiety would rear their heads because I was trying to be something I wasn't. But if we can accept who we are, then we can simply be the best version of that at any given time instead of comparing ourselves to people or, to others that we think we should be more like.
Oh man. Well, okay. So I'm struggling because curiosity, I feel like, okay, I can push past it and get more curious.
Okay.
Compassion, gonna be harder. It's gonna be harder. Self acceptance, oh, Zovig.
I know. These are life works. These are
Yeah.
lifelong works. Again, there's no there to get to, right? I think that we also, I mean, I have thought this like, can I just get there? Why is this still bothering me? Why do I still deal with this? Well, look, it's because we're human beings. And because every time we go through something, we change, we shift, and then that thing shows up again, and we're different in relation to it. So it's not like I'm
Mm.
still dealing with this. It's, oh, look at this, it's shown up for me again, and look how different I am now to be able to move through this in a different way. And accepting ourselves, that's a lifelong work. That's not a, I have arrived, I'm fully self-accepting, because if it were just me in this world, it would be so easy to like focus on me and be compassionate about me, but I'm not living on a mountaintop by myself.
Right.
So we have other inputs happening. We have other information. We have people's opinions. We have world events. We have all these things that can affect us and make us question and think. And so that's why it's a practice. It's not a perfect.
Oh,
Acceptance is a practice. Curiosity is a practice.
that's good. I need to practice. I need to get busy practicing. I laugh because it's something that I know is so critical and so important. Liz here, so she says acceptance is hard to grasp because for some, not me, obviously, it feels like it could lead to complacency. And then we have Facebook user. Hi, Facebook
Hi,
user.
Facebook user.
Hi, Facebook user. Not only are individuals often not self aware, organizations, associations fail to be self aware. How do you apply the concept to associations as well as people? Ooh, that's a good question.
Good
Good
question. Facebook
question.
user came with a good question.
Yeah.
So this is true, because as individuals, we tend to focus on what I do, how I do it, the results I'm producing. I have to do all these things in order to prove my value. And businesses are often set up the same way. Organizations, associations are set up the same way. What are we creating?
Mhm.
What are we putting out? What are the results? What's the ROI? What's the KPI? What are all the other
Yeah.
acronyms that we use in business, right? And those are the things that we reward our people for by producing. I say this a lot. No one ever got a bonus for being the most self-aware,
Hmm.
but maybe they should, because when a person is more self-aware, their ability to produce and be at a level of excellence is higher.
Okay, okay, okay. So pause, because that's why we're here, right?
Mhm.
Because we're talking about leadership, and that question of what does self-awareness have to do? Why is it that this top 10 to 15% of
Mhm.
leaders are the most self-aware? What is the connection there? And so talk to me more about this. Tell me more. What is that connection between self-awareness and leadership?
In leadership, yeah. So the more that we understand, the more, I'm going to say me. So the more I understand myself, The more I connect with what I know to be true, my true motivations, my true purpose, my true goals, my acceptance of myself as being this but not that. And that helps me make decisions faster because I don't get thrown by the committee that's screaming their opinions at me. It helps me be more resilient because I know who I am. So even if I've made a mistake, which happens in leadership all the time, big and small, you can give yourself the ability to learn from those mistakes. And so your resilience is higher, right? You're not beating yourself down. You're not like coulda, woulda, shoulda, or ruminating and all the things that didn't work. And we can never let these things happen again. We're not living in fear when we understand ourselves, when we're connected to who we are. We are our greatest source of truth. I'm not talking about deluding yourself. I want to be clear because
Right.
doesn't that just mean you're deluding yourself if you're not taking outside opinion? I'm not saying don't take outside opinion. I'm not saying make up your own stories about life. I'm saying check in with yourself because we often have the answers in us. It's just the thing that prevents us from getting to those answers is that we have emotions, we have fear, we have worry about getting it right or getting it wrong. And so self-awareness helps us break through that clutter
Oh
faster. It's
gosh.
not that we never experience those things, right? It's that we move through them faster, we move through them more efficiently and more intact. It doesn't break us down.
That moving through them faster, I've read a lot about things like spiritual bypass, and when do you know that you're sort of skipping past the pieces that require the work to
Mhm.
process them versus yeah, I'm actually dealing with this legitimately, dealing with it
Mhm.
authentically and processing it in a healthy way.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'm going to say this and I don't want this to sound like I'm being flip, but you do
Mhm.
know. I know when
Mhm.
I'm skipping past my emotions. I know when I'm trying to skip past the hard part and just get to the end.
Mhm.
I know because I don't feel well, physically, I don't feel right. Like my physical body will give me clues as to like I can feel nervousness, like my stomach has butterflies, maybe my throat gets closes up a little bit, my neck gets a little tension, so my physical body will give me information. But also I need to look at what's happening around me. How are people responding to me? If
Mhm.
they're not responding the way that I had hoped or the way that I had, intended for, then there's a gap here. Probably skipping something. And so that actually it makes me think I need to say this too. When we are self-aware, we understand the impact that we have on other people. We don't just move through and sort of knock things over and bull in china shop sort of metaphor. We don't do that. We are interested at looking at how we engage with others and being intentional about that and understanding how others perceive us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to ask a question that's actually, for everyone that's watching this, I try to give like a little tiny heads up on some of the questions I might ask. This is definitely not on the list because it's something that I'm just personally interested in. But it's like, I think for a lot of us, especially even as we've been established for, maybe a long time, I've spent, over 20 years working in the association industry. I feel like I should know how to do this better
Mm,
now. But, when you're in the middle of doing the work that you're doing and you feel that fear, you understand that maybe you're struggling a little bit with that self-acceptance part.
mhm.
You're struggling a little bit with that compassion part. How can you sort of get into the flow, so to speak? How can you get on track to begin to work on that self awareness so that you can sort of move in a more positive direction more quickly?
So if you're aware enough to notice that you're feeling a specific emotion or that
Mm-hmm.
you're having an experience, I think you're one step ahead right there because the first thing we have to do is notice that that thing is happening. We tend to object to our own emotions. I shouldn't be scared. I shouldn't be, I shouldn't have anxiety. This is wrong. I need to make it stop.
Right.
And so we kind of try to push past it or pretend like it's not happening. But if you notice that it's happening, that's great. Notice it, name it, and then get curious about it. What am I afraid of? That's where curiosity comes in. What am I actually afraid of right now? What scares me the most? And this not to be like an indulgent exercise, it's simply to unearth it so that you can face it. When we have a name for something, we can address it. If I have symptoms in my physical body, but I don't have a name for what I have, it becomes really hard to treat it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the
Yeah.
same with our emotions. And not just saying like, oh, I feel really angry. Oh, I feel anxious. Like those are, yes, those are emotions, but there's nuances to these things. Maybe it's just frustration. Maybe it's dread. Maybe it's, worry that something from the past is going to happen again. Get really specific and get curious. Why am I feeling this way? And what's actually true about this?
Yeah.
And
Oh, go
and
ahead.
what is it about me that I know in my bones that will move me through this?
Yeah.
That's like bone, I call that bone knowledge. I know in my bones that I can move through this. Some of it also is just making the choice to move through it and say, I'm going to do this with
Mm-hmm.
the fear, with the anxiety, with the whatever I'm feeling. I'm choosing to do this anyway. And that's sort of working from the outside in. Then we see ourselves succeed. And look at that, I did it and I didn't die. Nothing happened. I did it.
And so, how does this translate to what ends up happening on the other side of it? Yeah, I'm learning how to process. I'm learning how to get curious. I'm learning how to have, once I identify that, I'm learning
Mhm,
how to have more compassion for myself
mhm.
and to have more self acceptance. How does that end up translating to my relationships with others?
Yeah, then we can speak our truths and set boundaries because we're
Mm,
not as afraid that people will walk away.
mm,
Or if for some reason they do walk away, we know and trust that we'll be okay.
mhm,
In our personal relationships, it's being able to own what's important to us and be able to know that we are an individual, complete entity within this relationship. We're not incomplete without the relationship. So it's feeling whole and complete. And that then allows us to speak up when we need to push back, to take time for ourselves when we need it. And to be honest and truthful and loving to the other person without expecting them to fulfill something for us in return.
yeah. I love that because I think one of my favorite topics, anyone who's a regular listener or watcher of the work that I do, they know that I love talking about trust. And
Mm,
that's one of the key things with trust too, is that it starts with self-trust. You trust yourself, you do the things you say you're going to do. It allows you to trust others.
yeah.
Um,
If you trust yourself, then it kind of doesn't matter what happens around you because you know that you will find a way.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Zovig,
Mhm.
serious question here.
Okay.
Another personal. I'm revealing too much because I want your information so much.
Mm.
And that is okay. So I think I'm pretty good about feeling when I'm tense or worried about stuff. But what if I still have a little bit of that imposter syndrome and
Mhm.
I am definitely going like, does everyone think I'm a fraud? Is everyone waiting for me to fail? Is all of these questions.
Mhm.
And I ask this because um, you know, maybe when you're starting out, you're afraid that people are going to say that you don't have enough experience. Now I have a lot of experience, but I'm afraid constantly that people are waiting for me to fail, waiting for me to make the next wrong step, right?
Mhm.
And so, how do you deal with that? Talk to me about that one.
Well, I think sometimes we can have those stories go on in our heads, and then we own them like they are ours.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we can create a little bit of space between the experience that we're having and ourselves. I have experienced this where it's like, I am feeling this. I am the anxiety. I am the worry. I am the self-consciousness. No, those are just things I'm experiencing, but they are not who I am. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
language when we talk to ourselves is really important. When we use the words I am something, you better believe we're going to go live into it. If I say, oh, I'm a total control freak, you better believe I'm going to go behave that way. And so we have to be careful with how we talk about ourselves to ourselves because we follow suit, right? And
Yeah.
so instead of saying, I have imposter syndrome, like you own it, like you embody it, or, I'm so scared that people are thinking these things of me. Consider it as an impermanent experience. Gosh, I'm really feeling fear right now. There's
Mm,
a story
mm,
running through my head, and so when we talk to ourselves that way, we can create space between ourselves and that story, because that's really what it is. It's a story. It came from somewhere. It's not like it came from somewhere, right? There's a reason that it's there. But are we just reliving? Are we like trying to solve a problem that no longer exists with that story? Are we just sort of making the choice to relive it? I don't know. These are individual experiences, but putting a little space between us and the experience that we are having, and trusting that this is not a permanent state. It's not a permanent state. And and just saying, like, I'm getting in my own head right now, and noticing that the story can take on a life of its own. But who's in charge here, Kiki? Like, who made up
right.
the story? So who gets to interrupt the story?
Yeah.
It's you. It's me. You can tell me, and you can be like, Zovig, you're the worst such and such ever, and I would say, okay, that's interesting. You could tell me you're the worst executive coach ever. You could say that to me, right? I don't think you would say that to me, Kiki, because you're lovely. But let's say you did say that. That's my livelihood. That's what I do, and I would listen to that, and I would know that that is not inherently true.
Yeah. We
I
have
know.
Facebook. Sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
Facebook user says, yes, language is so critical in how we self talk and similarly how we talk to and about others.
Uh huh.
Isn't it though? It
Yeah.
is. And I'll tell a little story about my own family. This is something where my husband last year was talking about how he wouldn't be able to find a job that would allow him to work from home where we are now and at the same level where he was before. And I said, don't say that. Quit saying that. Don't say that out loud. There's no reason that that has to be true. But by you saying that, you're limiting what you're looking for, what you think is possible. Like, just don't say that. Why speak that into existence?
Yeah.
And and it can sound a little woo, but I don't think it is. I think that honestly, we're just very literal people. We can take things, and some part of our brain goes into work to making that true.
Yeah.
And so, I really, I think that these are really important words because, constantly, I'm, and a good friend of mine sort of brought an awareness to the language I was using years ago, and I still have work to do on it, man. I still have work to do.
I,
So, but it is
you're not
so
alone.
powerful.
You're not alone, Kiki. I think that what sets some people apart is the ability to admit, like, I still work through this, and it still shows up for me, and I work through it, and it shows up for me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I'm not excellent at what I do, or worthy of being here, or whatever. It doesn't equate to that. It just means it's something I still work through.
Yeah. And I love that. I love hearing that because I think then again, those of us who are trying to improve, we're trying to learn, we're trying to get better at what we do. And we think, I'm on a good streak, I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do. I decided I was going to work out. I'm going to increase my energy. I'm going to put the cold water on before I get out of the shower. I don't know, and we're doing well, we're going, and then we hit that day, right? Something awful happens, and then something else awful happens. And I'll speak for me, there are many times where that day happens. And at this point, it's happened enough where I'm like, oh man, don't let this derail you. Don't let it derail you. You know what can happen. But it can throw me off. In the
Yeah.
past, it has thrown me off where I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I start attacking myself. I start
Mhm.
becoming very critical. Is it because of the one thing that wasn't perfect?
Yeah.
Right. And just chiseling away at my self confidence on how I'm living my life on, and it can be on the smallest things.
Yeah.
And so I really, I think that this messaging is so important for people to hear.
What you're talking about is all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
Like, unless it's perfect, which who even knows what perfect is anyway, unless it's perfect, it doesn't count. Unless I did it all myself, I didn't actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I did all of the things every time, every day, I'm not, unless I work out every day or 6 days a week for the next 10 years, I'm not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that all or nothing thinking diminishes us.
It does. I catch it. I caught it yesterday, and I was getting ready. I've been preparing and working on putting out a new feature on Association Chat. Go to associationchat.com to check it out. But putting this new feature because I wanted to put all of these different podcasts together. There's a group of association podcasters who have we're on WhatsApp and we talk to each other regularly. And so I thought, oh, let's organize this and we'll have a downloadable spreadsheet and we'll add to it and there'll be a playlist and people can listen to all of them. And I sent it to a friend of mine ahead of time and I said, I'm really nervous about putting this out there and just promoting it and making it live. And she said, why? And I said, well, because, I'm afraid that it's not good enough. And she said, oh, watch out. That's good girl thinking. Be careful.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And sure enough, it's even in it, I'm asking for, and truly, if anybody's watching this or listening, send in the podcasts that need to be on the list. That's why we're building it. But, there was a post somewhere else where someone was picking at it and it really fed into my fear. Yeah. Because I felt see, oh my gosh, that's what I was afraid of. All of the fear of putting something out. But if you listen to it,
Mm-hmm.
you'll never do anything. If you listen to the fear, if you worry and worry and worry and wait for perfection, that day will never come. It will not be posted. It will not go live. That idea will not happen because of the fear.
It's this feels like it connects to a comment that's in the chat that says that Liz said, acceptance is hard to grasp because for some, it feels like it could lead to complacency. When we're not perfect, we're complacent. When we're not beating ourselves up, we're complacent. When it wasn't done at 100% or what somebody else deemed 100%, we're complacent. Acceptance of ourselves, compassion with ourselves, giving ourselves a break is not complacency, because I didn't say don't be accountable. Right. We are adults. We have accountabilities. We commit to things. We do them to the best of our ability. And then we get better at it every time. But beating ourselves up at it. If you remember that there's that website, some e-cards, it did snarky, sassy
e-cards
years ago.
Yes.
And there was one e-card that said the beatings will continue until morale improves.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
And that it cracks me up now because we really do think that I have to pummel myself and to get this right in order for it to matter, in order for it to count, in order for it to add value, in order for me to have value.
Mm-hmm.
And that does nothing but break us down. I mean, would you do that to a friend?
No,
you wouldn't do that to your child. You wouldn't do that to a friend. That's just not how you behave outwardly. Why would we do that internally?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking through this because I'm thinking of situations where that can be challenged. So, there are also the situations where the well-meaning professional is moving through their life and they're saying, yes, Zovig, okay, look at, I'm getting curious about these fears or the emotions that I'm feeling, the sadness or the loneliness. I'm getting curious. I'm asking myself what's going on here. I'm giving myself compassion. Mm-hmm. I'm even giving myself self-acceptance. I'm being accountable, but I'm not being complacent. I'm being accountable. I'm walking through and still bad stuff happens.
Well, welcome to life. I mean, I don't know.
This isn't magic. It's not going to make It's not going to make your problems go away.
No, it changes how you relate to those problems. Mm-hmm. It changes how you think about yourself in relation to those problems. You could have a problem and then the response could be, I'm not good at this. I can't do this again. Can't take any more risks. Not going to put that podcast out, the podcast collection out because that one person had a thing about it. that's one way of responding. The other way is, okay, what's true about this? What can I get from this? What's some good
Right.
feedback I can take away? And what's the rest I can leave behind? And how can I strengthen myself? Because if I really want to do this, or I really care about this, or it's in me to do this, why would I allow, what happened? What's the cost to me if I allow myself to be stopped?
Mm-hmm.
Bad
Mm-hmm.
stuff's bad with quotes. If you can't see me, I'm doing quotes, but bad stuff, things happen, everybody. It's not about those things never happening or you never feeling sadness or anxiety. It's about how you relate to them and how you move through them. That's the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like when we're thinking about our mantras, when we're thinking about our language, even as we're just our regular language and communicating with others, the way that we communicate and our, emails and everything moving out, but especially the way that we're talking to ourselves
Yeah.
on an ongoing basis internally and just thinking through things. That's not some sort of magic elixir. Like these are not, it's
Yeah.
not magic that's going to protect you from trouble, right?
Right.
Life will throw some challenges occasionally, but what it is you are better able to be honest with yourself, look and get curious and go through these steps and be able to be more resilient in the end because you've sort of been training yourself on these good
Good word.
habits, right?
That's a good word. Training
Is it?
yourself.
Yay! Yay!
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
exercise for the mind and heart.
Mm, I need more exercises, Zovig. What are
Okay.
some exercises I can do?
There's, there's all kinds of ways to cultivate your self-awareness and to
Mm-hmm.
develop the relationship with that you have with yourself. I mean, there are the obvious ones. Yes, if you have the means and the ability to work with a coach, someone like me, or a therapist, if there are things, things that need to be resolved, do that. There are, of course, there are all kinds of assessments you can take. There are groups and communities that you can join for different industries, also different personal challenges that we experience. um, Getting feedback is a very
Mm-hmm.
cost efficient slash free way of reflecting. If you ask people for feedback, listen to it. I mean, that's a really great tool. That's a really good ongoing practice that we can do, is to request feedback. And in organizations, in companies, to make feedback part of the everyday. And it's not always critical feedback. It's appreciation, it's coaching, and it's the evaluation type of feedback. Um, you can sit for 5 minutes in the morning. I don't. When I hear I don't have time, I'm like, do you have 5 minutes? Do you got 5 minutes in the morning, or 5 minutes right before you go to bed, to sit and just reflect? What worked today? What did I like about how I responded? How did I feel today? What do I have going on tomorrow? And give yourself the moment to reflect. Just those, write, if you can, handwrite, because that activates a different part of your brain. But writing these things down and getting them out of your brain and into the world
Mm-hmm.
is a really powerful practice. And when I hear people say, particularly people in leadership, like, I don't have time for coaching, I don't have time for self-reflection, I don't have time for that, it's really interesting to me, because what kind of leader do you expect yourself to be if you're not taking care of yourself?
Right.
How effective can you be in showing other people how to be resilient and high performing and be able to make decisions and have ownership and feel empowered, if you are not watering that garden in yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that self introspection and exploring, the ways that we're processing things and thinking through and working on ourselves. I think if we're not taking that time to reflect, we're missing out and on a huge part of what life is because we're sort of skipping past all that piece where we're supposed to be learning and
Mhm.
applying and then moving forward and I don't know, somehow I don't know, becoming better or in more happily enmeshed in our own existence in
Mm.
life
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
what we were before. I mean, what's the point if we're not doing that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think about this and I think there are always ways to improve. The training never stops, right?
Mhm.
Speaking of training, this came in, Liz. I do love Liz. I have to say, she's in
Liz
the book
loves you.
club and she's amazing. I think she loves you. She's saying, "I love this."
I love it. I love it, Liz.
Start the
Thank you.
training on the good patterns before you need them. Put on the parachute before you fall out of the airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All good metaphors. That's great.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So, you're talking about when people are working with coaches and
Mhm.
when they're going through, all these different ideas of things that they can do, even if it's the 5 minutes in the morning.
Yeah.
Um, when they are going through times of struggle, times of crisis, they haven't been working with a coach, but
Mhm.
like that time, it's on their doorstep. They're saying, I saw that podcast. I know what Zovig said, and I didn't start doing it before,
Mhm.
but here's trouble. What can I do now?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think that you have to reach out. Trying to solve these problems in our own heads is just a one-way ticket to disappointment. There's only
Mm-hmm.
so much that can happen within our own minds, and usually our minds are full of so much clutter that, especially if there's in times of disaster,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, or real big issues or big challenges, being in our own heads and alone in this stuff does not work. So whether that's enlisting the help of a professional like a coach or a therapist, or it's leaning on your community, meaning who are your three people? You don't have to have,
Yeah.
a big community. Who are your three people? Coming out of yourself and acknowledging that there's something going on that you're dealing with, whether that's a work thing or it's a personal thing or something in between, acknowledging and getting it out of your head and into the world so that you can play with it and look at it from all sides and bring some intellectual power, but also some emotional power to it, to figure out how best to get yourself through it. Usually we don't look at things unless they've totally gone kaput,
Yeah.
right? And I that's why I love the idea of putting on the parachute before you fall, because hopefully we're not waiting to start exercising the minute we get sick.
Right.
But
Right.
listen, that's what happens sometimes, when we realize, especially at work, I've been called in at times like, oh, our team is not doing well, or, oh, we're having disaster with this big change that we're trying to go through and we need some triage. It happens. But so the first thing to do is to recognize and acknowledge what's actually happening. How did we get here? How did I get here? What choice did I make that got me here? And what choices do I want to make to get me out? Where do I want to be? I think it's not just about looking backwards. It is more about looking forwards. Like, if this isn't what I want, then what do I want to create?
Ooh. Ooh. Oh my
What
gosh.
what do I want to
That's
create
good.
here? Because then
Yeah.
you're active. You're not complacent. You've gotten curious, you've been compassionate, you've had acceptance for what's happened, but now you're being active.
Yeah.
Where do
I
I
love
want to
that.
go?
Where do you want to go? What do you want to create? What do you want to have in existence? What would
Yeah.
this look like
Yeah.
if it
And
were working out and better?
yeah, and it could be
Yeah.
this big existential question, like, what do I want in my life? And that's great. I love those
Yeah.
conversations and talks, but also it's like in the moment, when a problem is happening, okay, well, what do we want here? What's the solution? What's the immediate solution? What's the first step we can take? What do I want to actually have in existence? And then we go toward that. Then we have a
Mhm.
place to go. Then we know what to do, or at
Yeah.
least we know what to try.
Well, I love that. And apparently Facebook user
All
loves that
right.
too. Says, "Oh
Facebook
my
user.
God, I'm so glad I tuned in." Hashtag awesome. I'm glad you tuned in too.
Mhm.
I have to say, people are probably going to want to reach out and follow. I know you've got a podcast that's
Yeah.
coming up and all of this stuff. What are the best ways that they can find you?
Yeah.
Where should they reach out and seek more resources?
Yeah, a couple. So I have a couple websites.
Mm-hmm.
My coaching website is boldnessablazecoaching.com. That's
Mm-hmm.
boldnessablazecoaching.com. And then yeah, there it is, boldnessablazecoaching.com. And then you can also reach me at just zovig.com. That's where I keep all of my speaking stuff. So zovig.com. And then I am launching a podcast. It is going to be launched later this month. It's called When Does It Get Good? And it is live with a trailer on all the podcast platforms. Apple,
Yay.
Spotify, all of the above. So When Does It Get Good is the name of the podcast. You can also, honestly, I'm going to give you my email. Email me at zovig@boldnessablaze.com. If you want to send me a message, if you're curious about, you know, what this is all about, coaching, etc., I'd love to have you. And then, of course, LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Find me
I
everywhere.
find her everywhere. Reach out and definitely reach out. Zovig and I have kept in touch over the years, worked on projects together, and I can't say enough good about her. And Zovig, I'm so glad that we've connected again
Thank
and
you.
we're able to catch up and that you were able to talk about this because I do think it's really important. It's important for all of you to understand too, dear listeners, readers, watchers, for all of you to know that Zovig also speaks and trains and she's out there she's writing, she does all kinds of great things. So if you are looking for somebody to come in and do leadership training and speaking, that's also something that you can find out more about on her website. I think that one's zovig.com.
Zovig.com. Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll get
yeah,
me either way. Wherever you land,
yeah.
you'll get me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. The time flew by.
Yeah. Thank you, Kiki. And to both Liz and Facebook user and anybody else who was watching.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
I don't
you.
know I don't know if it was multiple Facebook users that were, but like for everybody who commented, thank you so much. And definitely we'll have to have you back and have you maybe talk a little bit more about, I know you also talk about money.
I do talk about money. I talk
So we
about our
might have to
relation.
explore
Yeah.
that in the future. Everybody loves to talk about money. I like
Don't
to talk
we?
about
We love it
money.
and hate
Yeah.
it.
All right. Thank you, Kiki and Zovig. I'm the Facebook user. I'll have to go find out what that means. And I love you too. And this is the best way to invest my time.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
thank you so much. All right,
Thank you.
Zovig, we'll catch you next time. All
Yes.
right. All right. Oh my gosh. How amazing was that? I cannot believe our good fortune in having Zovig join us today. I knew it was going to be good. I have to say, she's a dynamic personality that I've always enjoyed talking with, but I have to say, this was even surpassed even my greatest expectations. So I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope that it's intriguing for you and that you use this information to improve your life, to feel better as you move about and more confident as you move about in your day-to-day life and to get more curious. And after all, it really is about curiosity, isn't it? Because I always like to say to keep asking questions to learn every day. Why? As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.